In a few moments, Raynor returned with 2 whiskies and sodas on a tray. He watched as Poirot lifted a hand to an ornament on the mantelpiece. "This is a valuable antique, I fancy," Poirot remarked, picking up a jug. "Is it?" was Raynor's uninterested comment. "I don't know much about that kind of thing. Come and have a drink," he suggested as he set his tray down on the coffee table. "Thank you," murmured Poirot, joining him there. "Well, here's luck," said Raynor, taking a glass and drinking. With a bow, Poirot raised the other glass to his lips. "To you, my friend. And now let me tell you of my suspicions. I first realized that—" He broke off suddenly, jerking his head over his shoulder as though some sound had caught his ear. Looking first at the door and then at Raynor, he put his finger to his lips, indicating that he thought someone might be eavesdropping. Raynor nodded in comprehension. The 2 men crept stealthily up to the door, and Poirot gestured to the secretary to remain in the room. Poirot opened the door sharply and bounced outside, but returned immediately, looking extremely crestfallen. Surprising," he admitted to Raynor. "I could have sworn I heard something. Ah well, I made a mistake. It does not happen very often. À votre santé, my friend." He drained the contents of his glass. "Ah," exclaimed Raynor, as he also drank. "I beg your pardon?" asked Poirot. "Nothing. A load off my mind, that's all." Poirot moved to the table and put his glass down. "Do you know, Monsieur Raynor," he confided, "to be absolutely honest with you, I have never become quite used to your English national drink, the whiskey. The taste, it pleases me not. It is bitter." He moved to the armchair and sat. "Really? I'm so sorry. Mine didn't taste at all bitter." Raynor put his glass down on the coffee table and continued. "I think you were about to tell me something just now, were you not?" Poirot looked surprised. "Was I? What can it have been? Can I have forgotten already? I think that perhaps I wanted to explain to you how I proceed in an investigation. Voyons. One fact leads to another, so we continue. Does the next one fit in with that? Ah, merveille. Good. We can proceed. This next little fact? No. Ah, that is curious. There is something missing, a link in the chain that is not there. We examine, we search, and that little curious fact, that perhaps paltry little detail that will not tally, we put it here." Poirot made an extravagant gesture to his head with his hand. "It is significant. It is tremendous." "Yes, I see," Raynor murmured dubiously. Poirot shook his forefinger so fiercely in Raynor's face that the secretary almost quailed before it. "Ah, beware! Peril to the detective who says, 'It is so small, it does not matter. It will not agree, I will forget it.' That way lies confusion. Everything matters." Poirot suddenly stopped and tapped his head. "Ah! Now I remember what I wanted to talk to you about. It was one of those small, unimportant little facts. I wanted to talk to you, Monsieur Raynor, about dust." Raynor smiled politely. "Dust?" "Precisely, dust," Poirot repeated. "My friend Hastings, he reminded me just now that I am a detective and not a housemaid. He thought himself very clever to make such a remark, but I am not so sure. The housemaid and the detective, after all, have something in common. The housemaid, what does she do? She explores all the dark corners with her broom. She brings into the light of day all the hidden things that have rolled conveniently out of sight. Does not the detective do much the same?" Raynor looked bored, but murmured, "Yes, very interesting, Monsieur Poirot." He moved to the chair by the table and sat before asking, "But is that all you were intending to say?" "No, not quite," replied Poirot. He leaned forward. "You did not throw dust in my eyes, Monsieur Raynor, because there was no dust." Do you understand? The secretary stared at him intently. No, I'm afraid I don't. There was no dust on that box of drugs. Mademoiselle Barbara commented on the fact. But there should have been dust. That shelf on which it stands, and Poirot gestured towards it as he spoke, is thick with dust. It was then that I knew. Knew what? I knew, Poirot continued, that someone had taken that box down recently, that the person who poisoned Sir Claud Amory would not need to go near the box last night, since he had on some earlier occasion helped himself to all the poison he needed, choosing a time when he knew he would not be disturbed. You did not go near the box of drugs last night because you had already taken from it the hyacinth you needed, but you did handle the coffee, Monsieur Reynard. Reynard smiled patiently. Dear me, to accuse me of murdering Sir Claude. Do you deny it? Asked Poirot. Reynard paused before replying. When he spoke again, a harsher tone had entered his voice. Oh no, he declared. I don't deny it. Why should I? I'm really rather proud of the whole thing. It ought to have gone off without a hitch. It was sheer bad luck that made Sir Claude open the safe again last night. He's never done such a thing before. Poirot sounded rather drowsy as he asked, Why are you telling me all this? Oh, why not? You're so sympathetic. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Reynard laughed and continued, Yes, things very nearly went wrong. But that's what I really pride myself on, turning a failure into a success. A triumphant expression appeared on his face. To devise a hiding place on the spur of the moment was really rather creditable. Would you like me to tell you where the formula is now? His drowsiness now accentuated. Poirot seemed to find difficulty in speaking clearly. I do not understand you, he whispered. Made one little mistake, Monsieur Poirot, Reynard told him with a sneer. You underestimated my intelligence. I wasn't really taken in just now by your ingenious red herring about poor old Corelli. A man with your brains couldn't seriously have believed that Corelli were worth thinking about. You see, I'm playing for big stakes. That piece of paper, delivered in the right quarters, means £50,000 to me. He leaned back. Just think what a man of my ability can do with £50,000. In a voice of increasing drowsiness, Poirot managed to reply, I do not like to think of it. Well, perhaps not. I appreciate that, Reynard conceded. One has to allow for a different point of view. Poirot leaned forward and appeared to be making an effort to pull himself together. And it will not be so, he exclaimed. I will denounce you. I, Hercule Poirot. He broke off suddenly. Hercule Poirot will do nothing, declared Reynard, as the detective sank back in his seat. With a laugh which was close to a sneer, the secretary continued, You never guessed, did you? Even when you said that the whiskey was bitter. You see, my dear Monsieur Poirot, I took not just one, but several tubes of hyacinth from that box. If anything, you've had slightly more than I gave Sir Claude. Mon Dieu, Poirot gasped, struggling to rise. In a weak voice he tried to call, Hastings! Hastings! His voice faded away and he sank back into his chair. His eyelids closed. Reynard got to his feet, pushed his chair aside, and moved to stand over Poirot. Try to keep awake, Monsieur Poirot, he said. Surely you'd like to see where the formula was hidden, wouldn't you? He waited for a moment, but Poirot's eyes remained closed. A swift, dreamless sleep and no awakening, as our dear friend Corelli puts it, Reynard commented dryly as he went to the mantelpiece, took the spills, folded them, and put them in his pocket. He moved towards the French windows, pausing only to call over his shoulder, "Goodbye, my dear Monsieur Poirot." He was about to step out into the garden when he was halted by the sound of Poirot's voice speaking cheerfully and naturally. "Would you not like the envelope as well?" Rayner spun around, and at the same moment Inspector Japp entered the library from the garden. Moving back a few steps, Rayner paused irresolutely and then decided to bolt. He rushed to the French windows, only to be seized by Japp and by Constable Johnson, who also suddenly appeared from the garden. Poirot rose from his chair, stretching himself. "Well, my dear chap," he asked, "did you get it all?" Dragging Rayner back to the centre of the room with the aid of his constable, Japp replied, "Every word, thanks to your note, Poirot. You can hear everything perfectly from the terrace there, just outside the window. Now, let's go over him and see what we can find." He pulled the spills from Rayner's pocket and threw them onto the coffee table. He next pulled out a small tube. Aha! Hyoscine. Empty. "Ah, Hastings," Poirot greeted his friend as he entered from the hall, carrying a glass of whisky and soda, which he handed to the detective. "You see," Poirot addressed Rayner in his kindliest manner, "I refused to play in your comedy. Instead, I made you play in mine. In my note, I gave instructions to Japp and also to Hastings. Then I make things easy for you by complaining of the heat. I know you will suggest a drink. It is, after all, the opening that you need. After that, it is all so straightforward. When I go to the door, the good Hastings, he is ready outside with another whiskey and soda. I change glasses, and I am back again. And so, on with the comedy." Poirot gave the glass back to Hastings. "And myself, I think I play my part rather well," he declared. There was a pause while Poirot and Rayner surveyed each other. Then Rayner spoke. "I've been afraid of you ever since you came into this house. My scheme could have worked. I could have set myself up for life with the £50,000, perhaps even more, that I would have got for that wretched formula. But from the moment you arrived, I stopped feeling absolutely confident that I'd get away with killing that pompous old fool and stealing his precious scrap of paper." "I have observed already that you are intelligent," Poirot replied. He sat again in the armchair, looking distinctly pleased with himself, as Japp began to speak rapidly. "Edward Rayner, I arrest you for the wilful murder of Sir Claud Amory, and I warn you that anything you say may be used in evidence." Japp made a gesture to the constable to take Rayner away. As Rayner made his exit in the custody of Constable Johnson, the two men passed Miss Amory, who was entering the library at the same moment. She looked back at them anxiously and then hastened to Poirot. "Oh, Monsieur Poirot," she gasped, as Poirot rose to greet her. "Is this true? Was it Mr. Rayner who murdered my poor brother?" "I am afraid so, mademoiselle," said Poirot. Miss Amory looked dumbfounded. Oh, she exclaimed. "I can't believe it. What wickedness! We've always treated him like one of the family, and the beeswax and everything." She turned abruptly and was about to leave when Richard entered and held the door open for her. As she almost ran from the room, her niece Barbara entered from the garden. "This is simply too shattering for words," Barbara exclaimed. "Edward Rayner, of all people, who would have believed it? Somebody has been frightfully clever to have found out. I wonder who." She looked meaningfully at Poirot, who, however, gave a bow in the direction of the police inspector as he murmured, "It was Inspector Japp who solved the case, mademoiselle." Japp beamed. "And I will say for you, Monsieur Poirot, you're the goods, and a gentleman as well." With a nod to the assembled company, Japp made a brisk exit, snatching the whisky glass from a bemused Hastings as he did so, with the words, "I'll take charge of the evidence, if you please, Captain Hastings." "Yes, but was it really Inspector Japp who found out who killed Uncle Claude? Or," Barbara asked Poirot coyly as she approached him, "was it you, Monsieur Hercule Poirot?" Poirot moved to Hastings, putting an arm around his old friend. "Mademoiselle," he informed Barbara, "the real credit belongs to Hastings here. He made a remark of surpassing brilliance which put me on the right track. Take him into the garden and make him tell you about it." He pushed Hastings towards Barbara and shepherded them both towards the French windows. "Ah, my pet," Barbara sighed comically to Hastings as they went out into the garden. Richard Amory was about to address Poirot when the door to the hall opened and Lucia entered. Giving a start when she saw her husband, Lucia murmured uncertainly, "Richard." Richard turned to look at her. "Lucia." Lucia moved a few steps into the room. She began and then broke off. Richard approached her and then stopped. "You..." They both looked extremely nervous and ill at ease with each other. Then Lucia suddenly caught sight of Poirot and went to him with outstretched hands. "Monsieur Poirot, how can we ever thank you?" Poirot took both her hands in his. "So, madame, your troubles are over," he announced. "A murderer has been caught." "But my troubles, are they really over?" Lucia asked wistfully. "It is true that you do not look quite happy yet, my child," Poirot observed. "Shall I ever be happy again, I wonder?" "I think so," said Poirot with a twinkle in his eye. "Trust in your old Poirot." Guiding Lucia to the chair by the table in the centre of the room, he picked up the spills from the coffee table, went across to Richard and handed them to him. "Monsieur," he declared, "I have pleasure in restoring to you Sir Claude's formula. It can be pieced together. What is the expression you used? It will be as good as new." "Oh, my God, the formula!" Richard exclaimed. "I'd almost forgotten it. I can hardly bear to look at it again. Think what it's done to us all. It cost my father his life, and it's all but ruined the lives of all of us as well." "What are you going to do with it, Richard?" Lucia asked him. "I don't know. What would you do with it?" Rising and moving to him, Lucia whispered, "Will you let me?" "It's yours," her husband told her, handing her the spills. "Do as you like with the wretched thing." "Thank you, Richard," murmured Lucia. She went to the fireplace, took a match from the box on the mantelpiece, and set fire to the spills, dropping the pieces one by one into the fireplace. "There is so much suffering already in the world. I cannot bear to think of any more." "Madame," said Poirot, "I admire the manner in which you burn many thousands of pounds with as little emotion as though they were just a few pence." "They are nothing but ashes," Lucia sighed. "Like my life." Poirot gave a snort. "Oh, la la! Let us all order our coffees," he remarked in a tone of mock gloom. "No, me, I like to be happy, to rejoice, to dance, to sing. See you, my children," he continued, turning to address Richard as well. "I am about to take a liberty with you both. Madame looks down her nose and thinks, I have deceived my husband. Monsieur looks down his nose and thinks, I have suspected my wife. And yet what you really want, both of you, is to be in each other's arms, is it not?" Lucia took a step towards her husband. "Richard," she began in a low voice. "Madame," Poirot interrupted her, "I fear that Sir Claude may have suspected you of planning to steal his formula because, a few weeks ago, someone, no doubt an ex-colleague of Cavelli, for people of that kind are continually falling out with one another, someone, I say, sent Sir Claude an anonymous letter about your mother. But do you know, my foolish child, that your husband tried to accuse himself to Inspector Japp, that he actually confessed to the murder of Sir Claude in order to save you?" Lucia gave a little cry and looked adoringly at Richard. "And you, monsieur," Poirot continued, "figure to yourself that not more than half an hour ago your wife was shouting in my ear that she had killed your father, all because she feared that you might have done so." "Lucia," Richard murmured tenderly, going to her. "Being English," Poirot remarked as he moved away from them, "you will not embrace in my presence, I suppose?" Lucia went to him and took his hand. Monsieur Poirot, I do not think I shall ever forget you. Ever. Neither shall I forget you, madame, Poirot declared gallantly as he kissed her hand. Poirot, Richard Amory declared, I don't know what to say, except that you've saved my life and my marriage. I can't express what I feel. Do not derange yourself, my friend, replied Poirot. I am happy to have been of service to you. Lucia and Richard went out into the garden together, looking into each other's eyes, his arm around her shoulders. Following them to the window, Poirot called after them, Bless you, mes enfants. Oh, and if you encounter Miss Barbara in the garden, please ask her to return Captain Hastings to me. We must shortly begin our journey to London. Turning back into the room, his glance fell on the fireplace. Ah, he exclaimed as he went to the mantelpiece over the fireplace and straightened the spill bars. Voila. Now, order and neatness are restored. With that, Poirot walked towards the door with an air of immense satisfaction.